has the least amount of patience in your experience? Person with a great amount of pride or little pride? Who's more long-suffering? And so, you know, the person who's got a lot of pride and prestige and power and wealth, those seem to be the least patient people in the world. And so here is Jairus. His daughter is dying. He humbles himself before the Lord, and he asks the Lord for help. And this woman comes in and interrupts the thing. Test of faith. Can you imagine the thought process that could have gone on in his mind? Hey, this woman is old. This woman has gone 12 years with this bleeding issue. She can go another day without help. My daughter's dying. She needs the Lord right now. Don't you know he could have struggled with that? How about you? Do you trust God in the waiting time? How well are you growing in your faith when you are tested with your patience? In cars, when traffic is there, or in a line, or at the restaurant, or with another person in their own development, and people at church, on and on. Isn't your faith tested a lot of times? Think about those situations where your patience is really tested. Are you using that as a time to grow in radical faith? People with patience have radical faith. And radical faith have great patience. You know, something happened to me just the other day, and it put me behind several minutes, and I'm immediately tested, my patience. But I'm more and more trying to go and say, you know what? I think God had a reason for that delay. Who knows what it is? That maybe I'm going to meet somebody, or maybe I'm not going to meet somebody in an intersection, or who knows what's going to happen. But if you have radical faith, you understand that God works all these things together for the good of those who love Him, are called according to His purposes. God's got some design. God's got some design for the delays that are in our life to strengthen our faith. And so we see Jairus moving on. We don't hear any record of him complaining about this woman interrupting. So this man of radical faith is being patient. He's able now, I believe, to look around while he's going through this time of patience, to look around and to see God working in other people's lives. Isn't that a novel thought? Instead of looking inward at me as to why I'm not getting what I want right now, to be able to look around and say, well, look at what God's doing in the lives of others and strengthen your faith. But doesn't that require humility? Doesn't that require us getting out of ourselves and looking at others and seeing what God's doing in their lives and begin to trust Him even more? Then, as we're going down this road, Jairus gets some bad news. The test of bad news. How do we deal with the bad news that comes in our life? Here you've got these people coming from his household and said, your child is dead. Don't bother the teacher anymore. The message is clear. It's hopeless. It's over. There's nothing more we can do. What's the deal with these servants? They're operating out of the truth that they have. They're operating out of the knowledge they have. The trouble is their knowledge is limited. Their vision is limited. Their power is limited. They don't have any understanding of who they are with. They're with the one who can raise dead people. But they don't know that. And so to Jairus, again, now he has a choice. He has a choice. Do I believe their truth, or do I believe Jesus' truth? Because as soon as they give the bad news, what does Jesus say? Don't be afraid. Just believe. Believe what? My daughter is dead. This guy's got a choice. Do I believe the common understanding of truth as we know it today? My daughter is dead. We know what happens with dead people. They don't come back. That's it. Game over. But yet we have someone else over here saying, don't be afraid. Just believe. You got a choice. All of us, folks, who are going to have radical faith, it's all about our choices. What do you believe? Do you believe Jesus, or do you believe the resources that are limited in our physical, natural world that we live in today? Who do you listen to? Who do we believe? Who do we trust? Radical faith believes Jesus. Even when we don't get it, we don't understand it. Everything that's telling us is telling us there's no hope. It's helpless. It's over. Game done. But the same words that he gave to Jairus is the same message he gave to the bleeding woman. Don't be afraid. Just believe. You know, it's neat how he put these two stories together. He did it for a purpose, because the same message he gave to this woman with the issue of blood is the same one that Jairus heard, and I think is now infused in him. Daughter, your faith has healed you. You've been freed from your suffering. He believed. This is a precursor to the raising of the dead. And I think that Jairus took that to heart. What are you going to believe? How do we get this kind of faith? Is it hocus pocus faith? Is it something that just some elite people have? Like, oh, she's got it, but I don't. Or he's got it and I don't. I wish I could be up to them. It is simple. It is very simple. Faith, the Bible tells us, comes from the Word of God. Faith comes from the Word of God, from hearing the Word of God. And we need to saturate ourselves in allowing God to speak to us on a daily basis. And as we hear the Word of God, as we allow the Word of God to speak to us, and we become obedient, faithful to that Word, you will get more truth and more truth and more truth. And you're going to get more blessing and more blessing and more blessing. How in the world do we go on living in this world thinking that I'm going to live contrary to the Word of God and expect His blessing? And yet, how many people who come into churches go on through this crazy, confused notion that I'm going to get more truth of God, I'm going to get more blessing of God, but I'm living contrary to the Word of God. It's ludicrous. It's not going to happen. But if you want that radical faith, and I want that radical faith, we need to allow God to speak loudly and loudly into our lives. Don't be afraid. Just believe. Believe my teachings. Believe my words. Begin to walk them out in your life in obedience and watch your faith grow and watch your blessings grow. Jairus had a choice who he's going to believe. And then Jesus, and notice who went in the room with him. He only brings Peter, James, and John. And he brings Jairus and Jairus' wife, the little girl's mom and dad. And they get to the house, and you've got the professional mourners there. You realize that in the culture in that day, they paid people to come and mourn. And by the way, the more wealthy you are, the more people they would hire, and it was required. And they would wail, and they would scream, and they would mourn and cry to show grief and to emphasize grief. And Jesus walks into this mess that's going on. And he says, hey, what's all the commotion? This girl's not dead. She's just sleeping. Look how quick these folks change to show how sincere they are about their mourning. They go from this mournful wailing to laughing in a nanosecond. And by the way, it's not the kind of laughing, ha-ha laughing. It's the kind of, you're an idiot laughing. You know what I'm talking about? The scornful laugh. Because they know what dead people look like. They see them all the time. In their culture, people don't die at hospitals. They die next door. They die in your room, your hut. Okay? And they know what death is about. And they think that Jesus is an idiot. That's the kind of laughing that's going on. Let me tell you what, this is one of the biggest tests, young people, that you're going to have, and all of us as well, who claim to have faith. We're making outlandish statements when we speak in radical faith. I mean, things like heaven and hell. No black, there's no gray in there. Black and white. We talk about dead man raised from the dead and now alive. People are going to laugh at your faith. People with radical faith will be able to walk through with that. Those who have comfortable faith will not even bring it up for the fear of the kind of ridicule they might receive. That scornful laugh, that little wry curl of the lip that people will give, the little wink of the eye, and all those other social things that are so hard for people to deal with today.